Okay, so in this video, we're gonna be comparing the neighborhoods of Tribeca versus Soho. Now, Tribeca is directly south of Soho. Soho is directly north of Tribeca. They're right next to each other, but at the same time, they're pretty different neighborhoods. So Soho is definitely more of a shopping district than Tribeca is. Tribeca is definitely more of a residential, quieter neighborhood. That's gonna be the big differences between the two. So when looking at two different neighborhoods, I like to compare with 4 different things, and that's gonna be living, dining, fun, and beauty. So what do I mean by beauty? I mean that aesthetically, how does it look? So when it comes to living, Tribeca and Soho couldn't be more different. Now, Soho is a lot more of a shopping-based neighborhood, and they do have dining as well, but it's very shopping-centric. If you're on Broadway in Soho, you're definitely there to shop, high-end stores. So it can be very, very, very touristy, especially compared to Tribeca, which really isn't touristy at all, except for maybe a few small spots in Tribeca. So you're gonna have a lot more people coming in and out of the neighborhood. In Tribeca, you're pretty much gonna have locals, or at least New York City locals. Soho is gonna be tourists from all over the world at all times in that neighborhood. Now, so Soho kind of turns into a completely different neighborhood at night. It's very, very, very quiet at night. However, Tribeca is, I would say, relatively consistent throughout the entire day. You don't really see these drastic changes between day and night. Of course, a neighborhood is just gonna have more people on the streets during the day, depending on what time you're comparing it to at night. But Tribeca at night isn't like this ghost town. It's just, like I said before, people who really live in the neighborhood, who are like just walking around the streets, or people who are coming into the neighborhood to dine. So, when I compare Tribeca versus Soho, which neighborhood would I personally rather live in? So remember, this is just a personal choice, and I don't typically like to share my personal opinions just because I'm a real estate agent and I never want my personal opinion to sway somebody, because what I like might not be the best for somebody else. So I do think that it's very, very specific for who you are as a person. So for me personally, I would prefer Tribeca over Soho. And here's why. I have lived in Tribeca. I've never lived in Soho. And there was a time in my life where I definitely thought I would live in Soho at some point. However, I then started working in Soho every day. And when I started working there, I then realized that I did not want to live in Soho. I didn't like that the neighborhood was so quiet at night. It felt like such a contrast from how it was during the day that it kind of just creeped me out in a way. And then I just like how Tribeca had more of a neighborhood feel. So I do pick Tribeca over Soho for me personally. However, like I said, that's always a personal decision. Everybody is gonna have a different answer on that question. So when it comes to dining, specifically in Tribeca, Tribeca has a lot of great different style cuisines that you can try in Tribeca. The dining scene is absolutely great. And restaurants there tend to be a little bit on the smaller side because they don't have these oversized storefronts that they do in other places, say in Midtown. So I would say that restaurants in Tribeca and Soho, actually for both neighborhoods, tend to be on the smaller side because they don't have these oversized spaces like they do in neighborhoods in Midtown, I would say. So in that scenario, it is the same for Soho. Now, dining in Soho is also good. There's a lot of options in Soho as well. I would say that in Soho, at least, restaurants can be a little bit more hidden than they are in Tribeca. So you might be walking by some of the top dining establishments of Soho, but they don't look like that from the street point of view, so you have no idea what you're even walking by. So I would say that Soho dining is a little bit more discreet than Tribeca dining from a street standpoint, but from a word of mouth standpoint, both dining scenes are very, very popular in the world of New York City cuisine. So from a word of mouth standpoint, both neighborhoods are very trendy when it comes to dining in New York City cuisine. Now, would I prefer to dine in Tribeca versus Soho? It's a tough call. There are places I love in Soho and there are places I love in Tribeca. Because I don't love being in Soho at night, I would probably go with Tribeca just because I don't feel like the streets are so quiet in Tribeca at night. And Soho, if you're just walking around casually, it can feel depending which street you're on, it can feel very, very quiet. So I think I also, for this category, picked Tribeca. Now I promise I'm trying not to be biased with these answers, I promise. Okay, fun. So when it comes to fun in these neighborhoods, I would say Tribeca is not really the most fun New York City neighborhood. It's really popular for people who are living there or people who are looking to go to a coffee shop or dine, but there's not really many attractions in Tribeca. Literally off the top of my head, I can't even really think of one besides a paint and sip location or something like that, or there's some live music spots that you can go to for casual, intimate live music, but that's really it for Tribeca. So I would say Soho has a lot more attractions and like these little kind of like pop-ups that you can go to that come to Soho. Not pop-ups as in shopping, but like I would say more pop-up experiences that come up. So I guess I would say Soho. And there are actually things and attractions that people can also do with kids in Soho, and that's definitely not the case in Tribeca. Now, technically, Soho isn't a waterfront neighborhood, so because Hudson Square, which is like the west part of Soho, is technically the waterfront neighborhood that is west of Soho. So Tribeca is technically a waterfront neighborhood, so you do have those like waterfront activities or things that you can do in the Hudson River Park. So I guess you do have that, but that's only really applies to the summer and maybe spring months when it's really nice out. So I guess I would say Soho for like being more of a fun neighborhood than Tribeca. Okay, so now the last category, which is probably one of my favorite categories whenever I do these videos, and it's the beauty category, which is all about aesthetics, but it's more fun for me to say beauty at least. Now, Tribeca and Soho are both really, really beautiful neighborhoods, but as with every neighborhood, there are some spots that are definitely not that beautiful in both neighborhoods as well. But overall, both of them have cobblestone streets and they have these gorgeous exteriors and like the style of architecture that they offer there. Now, Tribeca is a little bit more traditional New York City when it comes to a few cobblestone streets or like mid-rise apartments. It definitely feels more like neighborhood-like when you're walking through the streets of Tribeca, especially if you're like on the northwest side of Tribeca. Now, Soho has the most cast iron buildings in any neighborhood in the whole world. So we'll pop up a picture of cast iron buildings here so you can see what I'm talking about. You'll recognize these right away because they're everywhere in Soho. So if you've ever been to Soho and walked around, like you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when you see these type of buildings. So because Soho is filled with cast iron buildings, loft apartments, plus they do have cobblestone streets and like cute restaurants and cafes just like Tribeca does, I actually think I'm gonna pick Soho because Soho is such a unique neighborhood in New York City. A lot of times when people have been to other spots in New York City but have never been to Soho, when they go to Soho for the first time, it's truly like kind of like a really cool jaw-dropping experience because it doesn't really look like anywhere else in the world. So there you have it. That's my comparison of Tribeca versus Soho. So I have lived in Tribeca, I haven't lived in Soho. So at first I thought I might be really biased towards Tribeca because I just have more like emotional experiences there. But at the same time, I actually think I was like pretty fair in that. I kind of went middle ground with both, like 2 answers were for Tribeca and 2 were for Soho. So I kind of went middle ground on that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about both